Hey everybody, Career Coach Randy here. Welcome to the start of Season 7 of the Work With Purpose podcast. In this month's episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about a remote job. I've got a couple of tips of how you can use the tips I'm going to give you to help you find a remote job, a couple things to be thinking about if you want to look for a remote job. If you are on the job hunt right now, and if you're looking for a remote job, you're feeling stuck, you're feeling frustrated, I really think this episode is going to help meet you in a practical way. So stick around. We're going to talk about identifying a remote job and tips to avoid some job scams right now on this month's episode of the Work With Purpose podcast. And it starts right now. Hey everybody, welcome to the Work With Purpose podcast. I'm your host, Career Coach Randy, here, experienced career coaching professional. I'm so glad that you are with us here on this month's episode. If you're new to our podcast, we are a seasonal career podcast, and we work to help you go from being career confused to being a purposeful person. And we try to do all that in about 20 to 30 minutes during each of our monthly podcast episodes. Again, we're a seasonal career podcast, so that means you can expect a new episode from us during the months of January to June each year when we do our podcast seasons, and we usually have those on the fourth Friday of the month. So again, thanks so much for being with us here on this month's episode. So when you are hearing this, you might notice, hey, like this episode's coming out a little bit later. We got a little bit behind in our planning and stuff like that, but I'm excited to bring this month's episode to you. So I'm excited today. We're talking about what a remote job is, some ways to identify a remote job, and then some helpful tips to help you avoid job scams with all that. So I'm excited to have you on this month's episode. And so right now, let's get into our topic for this month's episode about ways to identify a remote job. All right, so as we're starting this month's episode, a couple ways to help you identify a remote job. One way that I wanted to start out with talking about this topic, just because with remote jobs, I could spend an entire, 2 hours, hour and a half talking about remote jobs and all the subtle, nuanced things that are part of that. But what I really wanted to put in front of you with trying to help you understand remote jobs is, I wanted to help you understand that if you're job searching and you're trying to find a remote job, really, there are some different details or some different types of remote jobs that you might find from your search. And if you look on the screen here, you should see these on the slides in front of me. So the two main options for remote jobs that you might find are that you might find those listed as hybrid, and the second one is fully remote. So you can kind of see the definitions up there, but really a hybrid job, think about it like this, where it's a job posting or a specific job that you see. If it's hybrid, you might have a few days where you're in office or a few days on site, but then you've got the other majority of your days where you're in person in an office setting or where your company is. So that's one type of remote job where it might not be fully remote, but you have a couple of days where you're able to have more flexibility or work, from home or different things like that. And then you've got really kind of the ideal thing when somebody, might, if I'm coaching somebody and they share with me, hey, Randy, I'm looking for a remote job. They're looking for that fully remote job where somebody can work from home, throughout their entire week and different things like that. So I just wanted to bring that up to you as we start this, remote job conversation, because there's a lot of subtlety and nuance with it. As you're searching, you might be, if you're listening to this episode, maybe you've been job searching for quite a long time, and maybe you've got some of those feelings of frustration because you're not seeing a lot of remote positions, or the positions you are finding, maybe you thought that they were remote, but as you're looking through some of the details of that job posting, you are finding that they're actually hybrid as you look through some of those details. So I wanted to start with some common language and common understanding as we're thinking about remote jobs, giving you that common language or common understanding. All right, so as we continue this more subtle, nuanced conversation of how to identify or find a remote job, I wanted to put a couple of ideas in front of you to help you get off on the right foot as you're searching or refine your search a bit more. And here are a couple points or a couple ways to really help your search. The first point I wanted to put in front of you, again, you can see it on, if you're watching the video version of our podcast, you can see some of the slides there. The first point to really help you if you are searching for a remote job is really review and really read your job postings. The reason I share that is because, you might find that as you're searching for a remote job listings at one company might be actually a hybrid job as you read like the full details of the job posting, where maybe you initially thought from the title it says it's remote, but then as you look more, it's actually got different expectations of it actually is a hybrid job, and that might not connect with your goals or what you're thinking about or what you thought. And so you might also look through the other details of the job posting. Later on in this episode, I know I've got some remote job extras that I'll talk with you about, some other things to maybe think about as you're searching for a remote job, what to look for, what to be thinking about. So really reading the job posting can really help you in your remote job search and help you really understand what you are thinking about applying for and things like that to help your research as well. And then point number 2 to really help you on your remote job search, ways to really help you navigate this in a clear, purposeful way is just understand that your remote job search, it can really depend on 2 big things. It can depend on the specific company that you're looking to apply for or join, and it can also depend on your specific field or industry. So here's what I mean by that. So again, just really thinking about like with your specific company or with your goal that you have in mind, like sometimes as I reflect back on instances when, I've been coaching folks who have been wanting to maybe change careers or advance, or, maybe they're searching for jobs and they want to have a certain type of remote job or certain flexibility or things like that. One big thing I just try to make sure folks know, maybe after they've been searching for a few weeks or a few months and things like that, is to really help them understand that, maybe your initial thought of your initial goal of a remote type of job, it might not be possible for one reason or another. Maybe you've been searching and finding companies and you're not seeing opportunities align with that for one reason or another. The second idea with this one is with the depending part, that it really depends as you're searching for a remote job, is just really understand that it varies on your industry. And so one thing that I would say comes to my mind with remote job searching in different industries is, from personal research that I've done and even from my past career coaching experience working with adults in career decisions, one thing I've tended to see as an example is a lot of times if you consider, from my expertise, the U.S. job market, different things like that, one industry that can be like this where you might not find a lot of remote types of positions can be like the banking industry or the financial services industry. So many times, if you're looking at various companies in the banking field or financial services or investment type of industry, things like that, you might find as you're looking at job postings, a lot of those are intentionally in person only, or maybe they're intentionally hybrid, like we talked about earlier. And sometimes from what I have seen and read is a lot of times with the financial services industry, a lot of times those decisions for job postings to be a certain way, whether it's in-person only or hybrid, sometimes that comes from the company themselves, whether they've chosen to do that for one reason or another. Maybe it's, private information. The nature of the job deals with secure private information, confidential things. But a lot of times what I've seen before too is that in the financial services industry, there are even regulating agencies or regulatory agencies. A well-known one, it's called FINRA, FINRA. And a lot of times an agency like that can set standards or expectations for the financial services industry. And that can kind of trickle down into the details you might see as you are job searching for a remote job. So again, with your job, when you're job searching, this second point to really try to help you is it really depends on your specific company as far as what's offered and how it can look like for remote positions. And also it really depends on your industry. And so I hope you found those 2 different tips of how to search for a remote job, or at least how to identify one, really helpful for your search so far. Hope you found it valuable and practical for your situation. So as we go along in this episode, if you're searching for a remote job, maybe you're job searching right now, or somebody who is, you might find that from this whole discussion of trying to find a remote job, that you might find that it's been frustrating, and that you would agree with what I've shared with you so far, that there's really a lot of subtlety and nuance with that sort of thing. And so with all that, I did want to put in front of you a really great resource that I've put together for you on this topic of trying to find a remote job in a very purposeful and clear way. So I'll put this on my screen here. And that is, if you're somebody who's wanting to take purposeful steps to find or start to find a remote job, I really would love you to check out my career training resource. It's called Real Help for Remote Work. You can see the slide on our screen if you're watching the video version of our show. If you visit my website, WWPcast.com/real help for remote work, and there's dashes between each word. Again, WWPCast.com/real-help-for-remote work. When you go there, that'll tell you more about the career training event that I've put together about Real Help for Remote Work. There are actually multiple versions of it available. There's an audio version if you're a little bit more mobile, on the go person. There's a video version, and there's an audio video bundle as well for that. So I'd encourage, if you want to go deeper on this topic, definitely check out my career training, Real Help for Remote Work. You can get that by visiting our website or checking that out in the show notes with this episode. Hey everybody, Career Coach Randy here. If you're finding this episode helpful, I want to invite you to go deeper with the show notes from this podcast episode. If you check out our show notes, it'll have the relevant links that we talked about, timestamps, even some deep dive application, reflection questions, stuff like that. So if you want to get the show notes for this episode, you can visit our website. You can see the link on the slide there. You can also visit our website, www.pcast.com/S7E1, and that is in all caps. So again, www.pcast.com/all caps, S, the number 7, E, the number 1. And then also, if you're finding our podcast helpful, if you're finding this episode helpful, I do want to invite you to do two quick things. Number one, I would love it if you would subscribe to our podcast, follow our podcast on our YouTube channel, or also subscribe or follow our podcast in whenever you get your podcasts, wherever you get that in your favorite podcast platform. And then number two, I would love it if you would leave us a positive rating and review on your chosen podcast platform. The reason I would love it if you did those two quick things, if you're finding our podcast or our career content helpful, is that when you subscribe or follow us, or when you leave us a positive rating or review, what those do, it puts our career content, a lot of our intentionally free career content to help you work as a purposeful person. It puts our content in front of new people who maybe have not heard of us before. They have a chance to connect with us, learn about the podcast and everything that we're trying to do. And also gets a chance to help and encourage and support others, maybe just like you, who are on their career journey and really trying to take positive, encouraging steps. So again, I would love it if you would consider liking, subscribing to our podcast here on YouTube or on your favorite podcast platform, and then also consider leaving us a positive rating and review. And so right now, we'll get back to our show. Hi there, welcome back to this month's episode of the Work with Purpose podcast. Again, this month's episode, we're all talking about a couple ways to identify a remote job, and we've got coming up in just a little bit about a couple job search extras, how to avoid job search scams. Again, I'm glad that you've been joining us on this month's episode. And so right now, we'll get into the second part of our episode is ways to a couple job search extras about some of the subtle things about trying to search for or find a remote job. And again, you can see these on my screen here. And so really with all that, a couple of things I wanted to put in front of you with the remote job search kind of process is some of the subtle things that you might find in remote job postings. And so you can kind of see those on my slide here if you're watching the video version of our show. But with remote job postings, one thing I did want you to keep in mind is really, as you're looking at remote job postings, pay attention to the details, especially details on things like internet connection, internet speed, or security. Sometimes what I've tended to see is that in remote job board postings, or remote job postings, you might find that there are specifics that somebody has to have a high level internet speed, or maybe they've got to be what's called Ethernetted in or have a wired internet connection. They're not able to use Wi-Fi and things like that. Sometimes that can be common. The second thing I've tended to see too, especially probably in the last 2 to 3 years, is if you're looking at remote job postings, read the details on the work environment. Things like if they've got verbiage in there about that candidates have to be in a quiet work environment, or they're not able to do things like family caregiving or parent caregiving during the workday, stuff like that. Sometimes there is verbiage like that. And so what that means for you, if you're thinking about a remote job, is having some additional planning or structure in place to help maybe care for your family member during the time that you're working, or caring for your child or your children during the workday. So different things to think about. And then the last detail I wanted to put on here too is really pay attention as you're looking at remote jobs. Look for the verbiage where it talks about, does this specific job need to match a certain U.S. time zone, or maybe this company is accepting remote applicants only for certain U.S. states, or different things like that. Again, this one really connects with the U.S. job market. That's a lot of where my realm of experience is as a career coaching professional. But that part's really important because let's say if you're in let's say if you're in a U.S. state that's in more of a Pacific time zone, so you're in kind of the West Coast of the United States, but if you're applying for jobs that are where the company's asking for folks in a certain U.S. state that's all listed on the East Coast or in an Eastern Standard Time zone, that's going to give you possibly some headaches or some additional logistics to think through if you were to apply or get accepted for that job. And so a lot of the remote job search, it really depends on a lot of those details, and really reading those job postings can help you make a really informed decision to help lessen those feelings of frustration. So that's a couple more of kind of job search extras for remote jobs. The last part for the main part of our episode that I wanted to put in front of you today was a couple of reviewing ideas about ways to avoid job scams. And one thing with that I wanted to put in front of you is with remote job scams. One thing I wanted to say is that one big action that can help you avoid a job scam is to apply as much as you can using the direct company website. So applying as much as you can using the company website. A big reason for that is the company's website, their careers page and stuff like that, that's going to give you the most current information about that job opening as much as possible. And so that can really help you in your job search process. The other thing too is that if you're applying for job openings on different like job boards and stuff like that, one thing that can very often happen is a company, they might subscribe to some of those different job board sites and things like that. But if a position might be filled, a lot of times if you kind of imagine the steps in that type of process in your mind, if a job opening is filled from a specific company, the first step that's likely going to happen is the position's going to be filled and information's going to be, taken from their company website first. And there might be some lag time for when that job posting is removed from those different job boards. And that can take a couple of days. It might take a week or more. And so applying from directly the company website, that can really help you get the most current, accurate information about those job openings that you're thinking about, and to really lessen the chance of being defrauded or going to a fraudulent website or going to a job board that you thought was legitimate and it seems kind of iffy. The second detail with helping you avoid job scams, one thing that I have tended to see and read about is really pay attention to the contact person from that specific company, or who that recruiter or HR team member, human resources team member might be, and really watch for kind of the requests that they might ask of you. One thing that can happen that I would say to you is a red flag, pause stuff and really ask questions before doing anything else, is that if the contact person from that company, they message you or if they ask you to do things like pay for equipment or send you money or go to this seemingly sketchy app or off some sort of official platform to apply for the position. Really be cautious about that, because that can kind of tend to be a sign of a possible job scam. One other thing too that I would say to you as well is that, and I will put this in the show notes with this episode as well, is that there is a really good resource that I have reviewed myself and looked at before. It comes from the U.S. Federal Trade Commission. They have a really good report and some helpful takeaways about job scams, how to be knowledgeable about it, and how to protect yourself. So again, I'll put those in the show notes with this episode, and you can find that on our website, WWPcast.com, WWPCast.com. And so I hope you found this episode helpful as we've been talking about understanding remote jobs a bit more, trying to be intentional with those, and then also trying to understand job scams and trying to, avoid those and just be mindful about that. And so as we get towards the end of this month's episode, we're going to go to our one of our main segments. It's we kind of give you one idea, one takeaway to help wrap things up. It's called our purposeful point. And so now let's get into this month's purposeful point. Okay, and so as a reminder, we're here in our purposeful point segment. It's that one key idea, one takeaway to wrap up this month's episode. And so from our episode here talking about remote jobs, the purposeful point I wanted to put in front of you is this. It's that finding a remote job in the U.S. job market, it takes focus, it takes planning, and it takes careful consideration. So again, finding a remote job in the U.S. job market today, it takes focus, planning, and careful consideration. So I hope you found that helpful, and I hope that as you've been journeying with me on this episode, that you've found that, hey, a remote job search, it does have a lot of subtlety and some nuanced things with it, and so it means it might take you a little bit more time to find that opportunity, or it might mean you have to look at job postings a little bit more closely than you thought to kind of navigate some of those details. And so that is kind of our purposeful point for this month's podcast episode, and hope that you found it helpful. So again, that brings us to the end of this month's podcast episode. I hope that you found this helpful and purposeful, and as a really good tool to have in your toolbox as you are navigating your career journey. As we wrap up here, I do want to say, hey, thank you so much for watching, for listening, and engaging with our episode, whether you're checking us out on the video version of our podcast here on YouTube, or if you're listening to the audio version of our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Again, I would love it if you found this helpful. Consider leaving us a positive rating or positive review on your favorite podcast platform, and then also consider liking, subscribing, or following us here on YouTube, or subscribing to us on your favorite podcast platform. We would love it if you would subscribe and check those out. But that actually brings us to the end of this month's episode of the Work with Purpose podcast. And so until our next month's episode, I do want to encourage you with a couple different things as we end. So again, remember, my name's Career Coach Randy. This is the Work with Purpose podcast. And here are the two things I want to encourage you with as we wrap up. Number one, you've been made with purpose, so work with purpose. And then number two is this: the best work that you can ever do is to serve and help someone else, and to do all that for the glory of Jesus Christ. I'll see you next time.